a large-ish university, but actually when you come and you visit it, if you come and you visit it, you'll see that it's very neatly contained within an area in Belfast. It's a research-intensive university. Let me explain what that means. It's probably best explained by saying that it's a member of the Russell Group of universities in the United Kingdom. Russell Group is the elite group of universities in the UK who are involved in research activities. That doesn't mean that there is no research in other universities, and it doesn't mean that there's no teaching at Queen's. Teaching is of course, a priority at Queen's, but research and high-end research is also a priority. So Queen's would be one of the most prestigious universities in terms of its research culture and its research profile, and the School of Law, of course, fits within that. Why would you choose Queen's? Well, I'm slightly biased because I was a student at Queen's and I'm now a member of staff. But you'll see from this slide that the Huffington Post says it's one of the world's most beautiful universities. That's probably not an exaggeration. The buildings at Queen's are very, very grand and impressive. It's also the main building. You'll see that that's the Lanyon building on that slide, providing the background. The Lanyon is beside a beautiful botanical gardens. There are very nice residential places for students, residential facilities for students, and social facilities. So it's a very good university. You'll see from the second point on that slide, you're guaranteed accommodation in your first year at Queen's. Probably about 15 years ago, Queen's reinvented, or I should say redeveloped is a better word, redeveloped its student accommodation. So there's modern student accommodation both to the south of the university and towards the city centre. And as international students coming, you're guaranteed access, should you wish to have it, access to student accommodation at the university at very, very favourable rates. The third point, employability is of course a key concern for any graduate. And if you're coming to Queen's, obviously I'm talking to you about law and you're interested in law, but if you're coming to Queen's to study anything, 96% of Queen's undergraduates are in employment or further study 6 months after graduation. So it's a very good stepping stone, both towards a career or towards further study, should you choose to engage in further study for professional legal reasons or for academic reasons. It's a good badge to have. Belfast is a small city, so that may be very attractive to you or it may be unattractive to you. That's something that you'll need to think about. Belfast probably has about 500,000 people within the greater Belfast area. So it's not like London, which is, let's say, 8 to 10 million people, or Manchester, which will have 1 million plus. But it's a small city and it's a very comfortable city as a result of that. It's extremely prior to the difficulties with air travel just at the moment, it's a very well connected city. It has 2 airports and it's also very proximate to Dublin Airport. So it's easy to get to Belfast. Often by a direct flight, sometimes by a connecting flight through one of the main hubs in London. Let me tell you more about the School of Law because that's what I know most about and what I'm best placed to talk to you about. That in the background, that's the entrance to the school, and I'm going to explain to you about the school building in a moment. The Law School at Queen's is a very good law school. I can say that, and of course, you'll think I have to say that, but it is a very good law school. It's in the world top 100 law schools. And you think that there are hundreds of law schools globally, if not thousands, that's a not insignificant achievement. In 2009, the Times and Sunday Times placed it in top 10 for top 10 in the UK for graduate prospects. That links back to issues of employability and connections that the law school has. It has a renowned international staff. Let me explain a little bit about the staff in the school. Some of the staff in the school, like me, are from Northern Ireland or the UK. And some of our staff come from other jurisdictions. So we have at the moment a Nigerian colleague, we've had Chinese colleagues, Japanese colleagues, Canadian colleagues, American colleagues, we have Italian colleagues. So it's an international staff in terms of its composition. And because it's a Russell Group university, it is an internationally renowned staff in terms of their engagement with legal debates, both in Northern Ireland in the UK, or whether in Northern Ireland in the UK, or more broadly. The fourth point is about excellent employer connections. The law school, the very last slide is a series of badges of partner, law firms and commercial organisations. The law school is very well linked in with employers, so there are opportunities to engage with employers through. We've a placement officer. Is there a question there? Did I? Nope. I think somebody's left their microphone on, so you may want to just check in case your microphone's on. So it's well placed in terms of its links with employees in the legal profession and more broadly. Law school facilities, let me tell you something about the law school. You saw it in the background picture a few moments ago, and that's another angle on the law school. The law school building opened in September 2016. So I said to you at the outset of my presentation that the law school or law has been taught at Queen's since the middle of the 19th century. In 2016, we moved into our new law school building. It's a £20 million investment by the university. And the law school has, if you want to describe it in these terms, a bespoke building for itself. So there are staff offices in there, some teaching facilities, and you'll also see some of the very particular features within the law school. We have a moot courtroom. The moot courtroom, it can be assembled and dissembled. So it can be used for mooting, it can be used for public lectures, it can be used for teaching, it can be used for law school meetings more generally. It's a very flexible room. We have interactive teaching spaces. The moot courtroom would be one of those, but we have other rooms in the law school building that allow use of facilities on the television screens on the wall, or well, we call it television screen, but screens on the wall that allow people to join from further afield, so we can have guest lecturers joining us or coming into a session. And the school is set up to facilitate that and has been set up to facilitate that since 2016. There's a social hub. That's, if you can go back to the picture that was on the screen a few moments ago, there's a social hub, which is for not just for the law school. Lots of students from different subject areas will gather in it. There are coffee facilities. There's even a piano if any of you want to play the piano. I wish I could play the piano, but I can't. So there's a social hub area, and it's very good for meeting people from other disciplines and having some discussions with them. That's a video. Now, I'll not put the video on because that can take some time to play through, but Jem is going to post a link to that. I would encourage you to watch the video. It's a video that explains something about student experience in the law school and about some of the activities that law students can become involved in, and societies for students, domestic students, international students, domestic and international students. Now, I understand that some of you will be applying through our Brickfields College Association in Malaysia, so you wouldn't be a level 1 entrant. But the majority of you who are joining us today are applying to join for the 3-year degree. So I'm going to talk about the 3-year degree, and at the end, if any of our Brickfields students have any questions about how Brickfields works around the degree configuration, ask the questions, I can answer those. But I'm going to speak primarily about the 3-year degree. You'll see that presently, when you come to Queen's, presently level 1 is you study the first 6 modules of European constitutional law, European internal market law, constitutional law, rights and accountability, legal methods, and criminal law. You may recall at the very start of the presentation I said that I teach in the field of public law, and in one way, not everybody would necessarily agree with this, but in one way, level 1 is really about public law. Public law is, you can think about public law in terms of the relationship that individuals have with the state, or branches of the state have with each other, and how power within the state is controlled. So constitutional law, to take that as an example, constitutional law will determine where sovereign power rests within a system, whether or not it's a democratic system, how people are held to account, who can do what, where, and when. And rights and accountability is really about human rights law and using human rights law to constrain public decision makers. European constitutional and European internal market law, that's the law of the European Union. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why would I study the law of the European Union when the United Kingdom is leaving the European Union? Well, 2 points. First of all, we haven't yet left the European Union, so it is still a part of our law. certainly until the end of this calendar year and potentially thereafter. But also, if you study European Union law, it will position you well for legal practice, because so much of our law will continue to be influenced by European membership and the experience of European membership. And it's also relevant if you wish to study subjects such as, or work in the field of trade law, for instance. So internal market law would be an important arrow in your quiver if you want to move towards trade law. Legal methods and skills is an introduction to the legal system, and criminal law is the area of law that most people associate with law, isn't it? We all think of criminals and exciting trials, and you learn about criminal law in year one. Year two, or level two, might reasonably described then as private law. So if you take the position that public law is about the relationship that individuals have with the state, with public bodies, the police, local authorities, so on and so forth. Private law is about relationships between private individuals. So your neighbor who lives next door, or the shop that you go into to buy some shampoo, or the property that you rent because you're coming to live somewhere, or when you drive your car. Private law, the relationships that you have with other individuals. And you'll see those listed there. Contract law is very strictly between two private individuals. We agree to enter into a contract. For example, when you get into a taxi, it's a contractual relationship where you pay the person for driving you to where you're going. Equity is an important aspect. Equity and trust is an important aspect of our private law, our property law. The law of torts. The law of torts is an interesting subject because it goes across a whole range of issues. So negligence. I give you the example of driving a car. Well, if you drive the car and you're not concentrating and you drive into the back of somebody and you give them whiplash, they will sue you in negligence. So you learn about negligence. Or if you go to the hospital to get to have an operation and the operation goes wrong, if it's a public hospital, that would be negligence. You also look at torts such as nuisance, noise pollution, flooding of property. And also in torts, we study subjects such as defamation and privacy. And if you're interested in the royal family in the United Kingdom, you may or may not be. If you watch the news at the moment, Meghan Markle and Harry are involved in legal proceedings in the High Court in England, which is really an outworking of the law of privacy. And that comes back to the law of torts. You learn about that. Also, you'll see property law. You study contemporary issues and obligations, which is contract and tort at a more advanced level, and land law. If you're studying the single honours LLB, so you come and you're just going to study law, basically you have to do what you're told in level 1 and level 2, because we give you the foundational subjects that allow you to move towards legal practice, and those subjects are key for that. When you get to level 3, if you take the image of spreading your wings in terms of the subjects that you study and taking the lead in your studies, and that slide is indicative of the options that are open to you as a level 3 student. So you've gone through year 1, you've gone through year 2, you've done very well, and you've decided, well, I like public law more than private, or I like private law more than public, or I like both. You can cherry pick from our optional courses and decide what you want to study in your level 3 options. I'm not going to go through all of these and explain to you what would be the content of the hours. I wouldn't know, frankly, but you'll see that there's mention of human rights, both in the first semester and second semester. So business and human rights, what are the obligations of global corporations in relation to recognising and protecting human rights? If you're more interested in competition law and you want to go and work in the City of London in a firm, you would study competition law, or you maybe take global business law and regulation, or international trade law. These are not offered every year. These are the subjects that we offer this year, that if staff move on to work somewhere else or are on research leave, these may not run, but typically these are the subjects that we offer. You can apply to take these subjects. There's usually a cap. Most people will get to study the subjects that they want to study. What I would say to you is, if you're coming to Queen's, and in fact what I would say to you is, if you go to any university and you have options that you can study, is choose the options that are going to give you the greatest interest, or are going to be of most interest to you. You're more likely to do well in subjects that are of immediate interest to you. So, and I would say, when you now go on to legal practice, it can be helpful if you study particular subjects, but it doesn't really matter. It's your overall degree classification with the important thing. So you could study law and psychology and decide you want to become a banking lawyer. That's fine. It's about getting a good degree. It's about developing a skill set as you go through your degree, and enjoying that and profiting from it. Okay, the tuition fees for international students are on that slide. They're presently set at £16,900 per year. That for year one, it's important to note that every international student receives a university scholarship. So the sum of £16,900 is reduced by £2,500, and it's also possible to reduce that by a further £1,690 with early bird, what's called the early bird reward. So if you accept your offer and you pay the full amount of your fees by a particular date towards the start of the academic year, in your first year, there's a potential discount of £4,190, which is a not insignificant saving on the international fees. If you've questions about the gem, I can probably help with those when I've finished my presentation. Student experience, we're very, very aware of the need for students to have, obviously, first of all, access to top level teaching, but also to marry that to a more general student experience that is positive and allows you to develop associations and critical thinking and linkages whilst feeling safe and secure at Queen's. So if you come to Queen's, there's student orientation events which occur usually the first week, for the most part the first week before teaching in the first semester commences, and a welcome week. Pastoral support is taken very seriously. We understand, of course, you're adults and you're making a conscious decision to come and live somewhere else, but even as adults, all of us have pastoral concerns. So you are given advisors of studies. The university, the Students' Union has support networks. So when you come to Queen's, you should not at any stage feel that you've been feel abandoned. There's always a strong reference point there for you, both for personal difficulties, should you have any of those, but also for your studies. And the law school has in place support networks through its advisors of studies and its personal tutors. We also encourage peer mentoring, so that's somebody who's been in the law school a year ahead of you and has some experience who you can be paired with as a peer, and he or she will assist you as you go through the university experience, advise you of pitfalls and advise you of things that you would and may not want to do. Small group teaching is important to Queen's. So one of the things that we, of course, large universities, one of the things that can be actually most interesting, most fun, is a large lecture. So if you get an engaging lecturer who's funny, that can be an important part of the student experience. But equally important is the small group teaching experience. You're expected to prepare, to come into tutorial groups and to be able to answer questions and develop your own opinions on matters through a process of dialogue and debate with your peers and with the member of teaching staff. Career support, I'll come back to that in a second. Exchange visits, we also have options for exchange visits. I suppose if you're an international student, you come to Queen's, that's a big step in itself. But while you're at Queen's, you may decide that you want to go off and visit another university for a semester. So we presently have linkages in Australia, in China, in Holland. If you're studying law in French or law in Spanish, you have to go away for a year. And we also have summer exchanges. So, for instance, I organise a placement each year in Los Angeles in the federal district courts, which is open to all students to apply. All students can apply. There's one student is chosen from the cohort to go there. So we've lots of, we've lots of linkages locally and nationally within the UK and in Ireland, but we've lots of international exchange opportunities as well. And you'll be encouraged to consider those and to avail yourself of those should you wish to do so. Student Law Society, it's very dynamic at the moment. It has its own magazine, so there'll be opportunities for you to get involved in publishing and editing through it. We have an active mooting society, which often results in participants going off for events in, could be London. What usually happens is there's usually the Belfast leg of something, then there's a London leg, and if you do very well in both of those, you can fly off to somewhere even more glamorous to have a mooting competition. Client mediation. I don't know how many of you have a head start on how the practice of law works, but one thing that is increasingly important in law is mediation or arbitration. Excuse me, instead of always going to litigation. Going to court is a very expensive business, can be a very expensive business, and it can be a more efficient and effective way to deal with a legal problem through mediation. So there's a mediation society, I think it's called the Alternative Dispute Resolution Society, that gives you the chance to look at law as a process of negotiation and resolution. Student Law Journal ties back to the Student Law Society. There's an opportunity for you to publish essays if they're deemed of a sufficiently high standard, and you should look to do that. It's a very good additional badge to have when you go through. Now, award-winning students, any institution will of course recognise the achievements of its best students, its very best students, and we're no exception. We award 30 prizes each year to the best performing students. So there are some examples. Arthur Cox Prize in Contract Law, Herbert Smith. And let me draw your attention to the third prize, the Lord Chief Justice's Prize. This is for the undergraduate student with the highest mark in Rights and Accountability. I coordinate Rights and Accountability. And as I said earlier, Rights and Accountability is really about human rights and how you use those to control government decision makers. The reason why I'm talking about that is not because of me and because I teach Rights and Accountability, but because it's the Lord Chief Justice's Prize. Northern Ireland has its own jurisdiction. So when you come to the United Kingdom, there's England and Wales. The United Kingdom is the constitutional order, but within the United Kingdom, there's England and Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So we have our own legal system, we have our own court system, and we have our own Lord Chief Justice for Northern Ireland. And the Lord Chief Justice very kindly lends his name and his title to this prize. So it's an extremely prestigious prize. And if I may point you to the picture, the top picture, you'll see the gentleman in the middle with two students on either side. That's the former Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland, who became Lord Kerr of Tonnockmore at the UK Supreme Court. And Lord Kerr is a Queen's alumnus, is very, very proud of his links with Queen's, and often comes to give talks at Queen's. He's actually due to retire this year, so he'll probably be around Queen's even more. He's been one of the most high-profile law lords, and there's a picture of him with Queen's students in one of the courtrooms at the Supreme Court. So we have very good links and direct access to the courts. I can illustrate the point again if you go to the second picture, and the woman in the centre, that's Mrs. Justice Keegan, who's currently the Senior Judicial Review Judge in the High Court in Northern Ireland. She's also our judge in residence. So she comes along, gives talks, and will meet students and facilitate visits. So very well linked to the legal profession, and we encourage you to avail yourself of the opportunity that we have to mix with members of the judiciary and with members of the profession as well. Those are some of the offices that have, some of the firms that have offices in Belfast and with which we have some links through the law school. In the bottom left-hand side, you'll see Herbert Smith Freehills. It currently sponsors our social hub in the law school, and it also has offices and opportunities for paralegal work in Belfast. Allen & Overy is, of course, one of the best-known international law firms. It has offices in Belfast, as do Baker McKenzie, and as do Arthur Cox, which is its main seat is in Dublin. So that's to go back to one. We've very real and active links with international businesses in law or in accountancy. You may take a law degree and then go on to study as an accountant and qualify as an accountant, and we have links of that kind. So I think that's probably enough from me at this stage, and we'll go to the questions. If you have any questions in the sidebar, I will try and bring up the sidebar so I can see questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and I will do my very best to answer them. Who's going to ask a question? So, thanks, Kat. I'd like to ask whether you accept. Gemma, do you know the answer to that? My understanding is all applications are through UCAS, but Gemma, can you?
So basically what it is, you can apply. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah.
Yep, I can hear you.
You can apply direct to the university, but how it works is if you apply direct to any university in the UK, they have to notify UCAS that they've got your application direct. So you can't apply through both. You can't apply through UCAS and apply direct. So once we get a direct application, we have to notify UCAS that we've got your application. You would only apply direct to a university if you only apply to that university basically in the UK. So you can, I will post the link up actually to show you where our direct application form is. But if you currently are applying through UCAS, you can't now then apply to us as well. You would have to withdraw your UCAS application basically if you want to pursue the direct application with Queen's. But I'll post the link up to the direct application on the chat.
Okay. And Angson, you'd also asked a question about the methods of assessment for some of the compulsory modules. If you were coming to Queen's as a year one student, you would, in year one, some of the courses would be by way of exam, and some of the courses would be by way of exam and assessment. As you progress through the degree, there tends to be more emphasis on assessed work. So certainly in third year, you would be doing assessed work. Maybe some courses would still offer exams, but generally you start more with exams and then progress towards assessed work later in the degree. That's not to say there's no assessment in first year, it's not to suggest there are no exams in third year, but that's the way in which the balance tends to work out. The next question is, how much is the minimum score required for an IB diploma student? What Gemma is going to do, Gemma is going to post a link to internal documentation, university documentation that will provide answers to those questions. And if you don't get an answer there, you'll need to contact the admissions office at Queen's, and Gemma, that the document she'll put up will have the address for them. There's an admissions office that deals with your applications, and you'll get an answer to that question there. Is immigration law available? How many students are there in the tutorial class? Okay, is immigration law available? It's not presently offered as an option. We do have one member of staff who previously used to write a lot in the area of immigration, but he no longer does. So immigration law would be an option. Typically in law schools, it wouldn't be a core module. So the short answer is at present immigration law is not available. When you're studying rights and accountability, or you're studying constitutional law, or you're studying European Union law, there may be some cases that take their context from an immigration dispute, but we don't offer a discrete module. How many students are there in a tutorial class? Typically between 10 to 15 students. So in the core modules, all things being equal, the core modules would have, let's say, 270 students who would attend lectures together, and then they would divide it into tutorials. Tutorials would have 10 to 15 or 12 to, about 10 to 15 students per tutorial. Does the client mediation include pro bono opportunity? No, I should have mentioned there's street law. It used to be offered by the school, which would tend towards pro bono opportunity, but the best direction for pro bono work in the law school is we have, it runs from year to year because it depends upon the goodwill and the efforts of the Law Society, but we have a clinical law module, and the clinical law module would be the one that would go closest to pro bono opportunity. The clinical law module involves you going out to the Law Centre for Northern Ireland, and you give advice to people who tend to be from more deprived social and economic backgrounds, who, for example, are having difficulties accessing welfare payments, or challenging welfare decisions about welfare payments, and you can have an opportunity to go to tribunals and get first-hand experience there. It's not salaried; it's within the context of the law degree, but it would be close to what we would describe as pro bono work. The next question, I'm afraid I don't follow that question, Gemma. Perhaps you do. What is the selectivity ratio for this program?
I presume that means the number that apply and the number that enroll.
Yeah, well, if that's what it means, if Queen's makes you an offer, you get the grades, you have to be taken into the university. That's the basic position, isn't it, Gemma?
Yeah, basically what it is whatever your offer letter says, we have to stand over that. So if you meet the entry criteria that are detailed in your offer letter, you're guaranteed a place on the course, basically. Generally, most students would apply through UCAS, so you're probably getting 5-6 times the amount of applications than there are places on the programme as a guide. But the bottom line is, if you meet the requirements of your offer, you're guaranteed a place on the programme.
Okay, thanks, Gemma. The next question is, what is the requirement for those transferring during year 2? Now, there are 2 ways I can read that question. One is, if that's a Brickfields query, and you were coming from Brickfields at the end of your first year of Brickfields, you have to have an average. You have to pass all of your year 1 subjects in the first go and have an average over 50%. Otherwise, you can't transfer. If that was a suggestion that somebody was transferring from another law school, that's a matter that the admissions office will deal with in conjunction with the admissions officer, because it will depend upon which subjects you've taken in year one in that other university and whether or not they would allow you to take our year two, because you have to have taken certain foundational subjects to progress to year two. But I suspect that's a query about Brickfields, and the answer is an average of 50% with the pass mark at first attempt in all subjects. The next question is that's a very perceptive question, and it's the obvious question: will the COVID-19 pandemic affect the starting year? The answer to that is, at this stage, we just don't know, and that's not me being evasive in the answer I'm giving you. I suspect that's the same answer that you get from any university at the moment. Queen's is presently just looking at all options, which include starting in September, but and looking at other options beyond that, because it needs to be reflexive and flexible whenever it becomes clear what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm sorry if that's evasive, but it's the most honest answer I can give you. Potentially yes, potentially no. If you're an applicant to the law school, you'll get information in due course as soon as the university knows that the information is there. Gemma, do you want to add anything on that, or is that?
Yeah, basically you should hear quite soon what your different options are, but we are considering a number of options. So it'll be posted on our website anyway. If you haven't applied already, we have a frequently asked questions link on the main website. So if you keep an eye on that, I'll post the link on the chat now so that you know where to look within the next week or so.
Thanks, Gemma. The next one is from Claude, which asks how distinct the difference are between Northern Irish law and English law, and can you work in England after your studies at Queen's, or do you do a postgraduate course there? Excuse me. Well, let me take make a point in relation to your last question first, Claude. Anybody who wants to practice law has to take professional studies after they take an undergraduate law degree, and that's true in England and it's true in Northern Ireland. So you would have to take postgraduate studies if you want to study in England. To go back to the top, and I'll come back to the issue of qualification. How distinct are the differences between Northern Irish law and English law? There basically are no distinctions, insofar as the legal principles that are studied are exactly the same in all subjects, except for land law, where there are some historical differences. But when you study tort law, contract law, rights and accountability, constitutional law, equity and trusts, there are next to no differences at all. We do have our own courts, so we get our own judgments, but they're indistinguishable in terms of the principles that are followed in England and Wales. We also, there can be statute maybe labelled differently, but it will be underpinned by the same principle. So no meaningful difference. So I can then answer your second question: can you go to work in England after your studies at Queen's? Yes, you do. Yes, you can. Excuse me. Yes, you can go to work in England. If you wanted to go and work in England, I would then say to you, at the end of your law degree in Queen's, go and take your professional studies in England and Wales if you want to study there. And if you want to stay in Northern Ireland, take your professional studies in Northern Ireland. It's even possible, if you qualify as a lawyer in England, to transfer to Northern Ireland, and vice versa, but it becomes slightly more complicated. But if you take an undergraduate, if your intention is to take an undergraduate degree at Queen's with a view to studying in England, it's absolutely not a problem. There's no bar to that at all. The next question is from Lehman Lee. If, let's say this year, some of us are not able to head to the UK because of the pandemic, are we able to join next year? I'll allow Gemma to answer that. That would go to the issue of deferral. Gemma, do you want to answer that?
You should be able to, you probably would not have to reapply through UCAS. You would just ask the university to defer. So we would accept probably requests for deferrals right up until the start of the course almost. So you would just email admissions@qub.ac.uk and ask them for a deferral, sorry. I'll put the email address in the chat line again, but it should be possible just to ask for a deferral for the following year if you have an offer.
Okay, thanks, Gemma. The next two questions, I've already mentioned that Gemma's going to put up links to the university's internal guidance on requirements and GPAs and IELTS will be dealt with in that. And if you have queries about those, the thing to do is contact the admissions office, and it will take you through the particular requirements. In the law school, we require you to have 2 A's and a B or equivalent in A level, and the admissions office can explain to you how that breaks down. Next question is from Joyce. Can I defer my entry year? Well, Gemma's already answered that one. Brandon, does the finance law module in year 3 teach tax and revenue law? Brandon, I'm going to hide my face in shame and say I don't know, because I don't know anything about finance law. I don't teach it. If it were predominantly tax and revenue, it would have to declare itself as such. It may be about more generally the regulation of markets, but I don't know. But if you send me an email, please send me an email. And my email address is on the slide. If you send me an email, I will contact the course coordinator and ask for a copy of the module syllabus, and I'll ask for permission to forward that on to you, and that will answer the question for you. And of course, I'll learn something as well by doing that for you. Next question is, what kind of internships do students do during the summer? There are two aspects to that, Sadwick. One is the law school generates some internships. So I mentioned the LA program, where students go off and work for 2 federal judges. The university also has, certainly used to have the opportunity to go off and take our internships in Capitol Hill in the States. And it's also possible for students to pursue their own internships. You'll see internships will be advertised, or you may just write and seek an internship placement with an NGO. And the law schools function in that circumstance is to provide you with letters of reference and to support you in making those sorts of applications. So some come from within the law school, and some are pursued by individuals themselves. And Gemma's and the next one was just mentioned the English language exams. Okay, Shan's question that has been answered by Gemma. The subject I meant that of the number of applications, how many are selected for admission? I think the answer remains the same. I mean, we can have let's say 1,000 applications to the law school. Admissions will make offers on the basis of a student's performance to a particular level, and will send out. I mean, there'll be a number crunching exercise will go on where a certain number of offers will be sent on the understanding that not everybody either will get the grades that they're offered or will take their place at Queen's. But if an offer is made to somebody at Queen's, so let's say you're offered a place on the basis you get 2 A's and a B, or the equivalent to 2 A's and a B, and you meet that, Queen's has to honour that offer to you. So it doesn't become there's a numerical game that's entered into by the admissions office, and it can lead to people being given offers of places, and if the offer's taken and met, Queen's has an obligation to make good on its offer. Cha, how will classes be conducted if social distancing needs to be practiced due to COVID-19? That's an excellent question, and we are grappling with that, as indeed are all universities, and as indeed are parliaments, and as indeed are businesses. There is talk about the word that's being used at the moment is blended teaching, so some teaching online and then some teaching in classes. And so again, this goes back, the university is exploring every possibility and to see what's possible. And again, I'm not trying to be evasive until we have greater clarity about when we'll be able to host large meetings of people. Again, we don't know how this will proceed. There is talk in Europe, some countries are talking about not allowing gatherings of more than 50 people. Well, that's no problem if there's a class and you can have up to 50 people, and as long as a room can be found, then social distancing can be observed, and that's fine. It's the challenge for law schools across the UK is the issue of, let's say, 300 students, and if there's a bar. So the university has its eyes open on all these issues, and is making very real inquiries. One option is Microsoft Teams, for example, for lectures, then followed by tutorials in person, but we don't know is the answer at this stage. Gemma is how many students are admitted to the LLB each year? Good question, Sandra. We typically have, in year one, we would typically have about 230, 240 domestic students, and then in the realm of about 30 to 40 international students. So I teach on the core course in the year one, and in a full lecture hall there'll be about 270 students or something like that. until I give my first lecture, and then people don't want to listen to me again. So about somewhere between 250 and 300 would be a ballpark figure that could accommodate any given year. The next question is, what about paralegal studies? Is it included? Of course, it was explained in the presentation. No, paralegal, to become a paralegal, you would really have to have finished your degree in law, first of all, and then you would go and become a paralegal in an office. So it would be an opportunity, an employment opportunity after you've finished your degree, short of being a qualified lawyer. So some of the firms that I mentioned, Pinson Masons, Smith Freehills, they would have offices, and paralegals would go in. They wouldn't strictly need to be qualified, but they would want you to have a law degree before you went into work in that capacity. That wouldn't be undertaken as part of your course. Again, the closest that one would get to that would be through the clinical law module. So, well, Claude said, thank you for this one. Thank you, Claude, for letting me know that it worked. No, thank you. I'm very interested in French and civil law, the French course. Well, this is a subject close to my heart. I didn't study law in French, Claude, but I wish that I had. But my French isn't very good. That's the only problem. I'll find out, Claude. Can you send me an email, and I'll find out what our current partners are. We did have I think we've had partnerships certainly in the past, and I can't imagine we've only got Toulouse. We've had partnerships in the past, certainly with Lyon and Bordeaux, and with Louvain in Belgium. But if you send me an email, Claude, I'll find that out for you very quickly. What happens is if you come to study law and common and civil law with French, you do the first 2 years of Queen's, and you have to take. It's different for you. You don't get law options. You will take all of the subjects that are in years 1 and 2, but they're spread across 3 years of teaching at Queen's with then core subjects in French, and then you'll spend a year in France. The link in Bordeaux was one that I had created because I have a friend who teaches at Bordeaux, Olivier Dubos, but it wasn't renewed in the end. But there'll be more than Toulouse. If you can send me an email, I'll find that out for you, certainly, not a problem. How many students achieve first class honours on average per year? Good question. It's probably in and around 8 to 10%, Crystal. The general profile would be, I would say 8 to 10% would get a first. So that's probably 10 to 15 to 20 students. And then I would hazard a guess that something like 70% would get 2 1 degrees. And then the remainder would typically get 2 2s. It's very rare that somebody gets a third. But that's generally the profile. So smallish at the top, 8 to 10%, then a very large cohort of 2 1 degrees and 2 2. Charmaine, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, certainly you can join the classes, but you shouldn't be charged more as compared to local students. That wouldn't be legally acceptable. There'd be no basis for that. So I would without knowing for sure, I would say yes, you can join the classes, but no, you wouldn't be charged more. It would have to be the same. And Claude, thank you. I look forward to receiving your email. I'll reply to that when I get it. Is commercial law compulsory? It's not, Chad. That's a good question, but it's not. And this comes back to the point: if you want to work in a corporate law firm, if that's what your interest is, then study corporate law, study finance law, study global corporations, whatever. If that really makes you tick intellectually, because you'll do best in those. But what employers are typically looking for, I have some experience of legal practice as well. What employers are typically looking for is not the subjects that you've studied. You have to study the foundational subjects. It's not the studies that you've subject, but it's the skill set that you've acquired and how well you've done in your degree. So you may end up becoming a commercial law specialist in London, but you've taken your foundational subjects and law and philosophy, law and emotions, legal theory. What a law firm wants is incisive thinking, precision, and ability to write, an ability to think independently and to act independently. So you may develop those skills in the context of studying commercial law, or you may have developed them through doing an independent research project in the law school. So, are there any other questions? I mean, if you do have other questions, Gemma's posted my email online. If you do have other questions, feel free to send me an email. I know I'm going to get some emails from Claude and potentially Brandon, I think his name was. So please send me emails and I'll reply to them. Or if you have a series of questions, I can meet you again on Microsoft Teams. We can arrange that. But pending that, thank you very much for attending today. Goodness knows what time it is where we are. If you're in Malaysia, it'll be close to 11. Good. When does the admission process start, Gemma? And when are offers sent?
Basically, if you've applied already, you should have got a response by now or pretty soon. So they normally aim to get offers made within a couple of weeks of the application at the very latest. And then once you get your results or your final results, so if you haven't got your final results, you're normally made a conditional offer. And then once you get your final results, you send your results in, and then it changes to unconditional. And then if you're an international student, you obviously have to apply for your visa. So
he's looking at 2021 admissions. That would be.
Well, basically, you would probably be applying through UCAS, or if you're just applying through Queen's, you can apply direct. So the UCAS system will open probably, I think, September or so for 2021 entry. And then you're normally made an offer within, if you're going to be made an offer, meet the entry requirements within a couple of weeks. And the offer letter will specify what you will be asked for in your whatever exams you're sitting, basically. And the course starts in September each year.
Yeah, I mean, if you have further questions, then let's have it just come back to us and we can get you the timeline. But that's generally, Gemma's, as I remember, I haven't been involved in admissions for that end of admissions for about 5 or 6 years, but that's how I remember it. And their deadline is specified by UCAS if you're going through UCAS, aren't you, Gemma?
Yeah, I can put in, I'll email everyone a copy of this presentation and I'll put in the UCAS deadlines. I know some of you have applied for entry this year, but I'll just include UCAS deadlines and replies just for anybody who's applying for the following year as well. Accommodation. Yes, let me think. You can apply more or less for accommodation anytime. For international students, no matter when you apply, you're generally guaranteed accommodation as an international student. But the earlier you apply, the better, because there's lots of choice of Queen's accommodation. So the earlier you apply, the more likely you are to get your first choice of accommodation. But I'll post a link now to accommodation so you can see. It generally opens at a set time each year to apply. So I think it opened about January this year. But basically what I'm saying is the earlier you apply, the better, the more likely you are to get your first choice. But generally international students are all guaranteed accommodation for their first year of study at the university, no matter how late they apply.
Yeah, the accommodation is very good. I mentioned in my presentation that it's been redeveloped. So there are 2 main accommodation areas for students. So there's what's called Elms Village, and it is a collection of flats and apartments up. There's a road called the Malone Road, and you walk up. It's about a 15-minute walk away from the main university campus. And then we also have accommodation down towards the city centre. And when you go on and look online at the different options, you can have accommodation with ensuite facilities, or you can have accommodation where bathroom facilities are shared. And as Gemma says, those are quicker out of the block in terms of applications. If they want to have one with an ensuite bathroom, let's say, you're more likely to get that if you apply quickly. So are there any other questions at all? No, then I shall so thank you for joining us, and thank you for your kind messages of thanks. If you have any questions at all, if anything comes to mind, please do feel free to send an email, and I will find out the answer for you. It would be a pleasure to do so. Okay, thank you.